Rejecting External Control. Inspired by Caroline Myss. Written and published by Audible Aria. Caroline Myss is a well-known American author, speaker, and spiritual teacher, particularly recognized for her work in the fields of energy medicine, intuition, and spiritual development. She has written several best-selling books that focus on topics such as personal empowerment, the mind-body connection, and the role of spirituality in healing. Some of her most popular books include Anatomy of the Spirit, Sacred Contracts, and Entering the Castle. These works often explore how our beliefs, emotions, and spiritual practices can influence our health and well-being. Myss is also known for her work as a medical intuitive, which involves using intuition to help people understand the emotional and spiritual aspects of their physical illnesses. In addition to her books, Caroline Myss has given numerous lectures, workshops, and online courses, and she continues to be a prominent figure in the field of personal and spiritual growth. Now imagine where you are now as a peaceful place, like a quiet monastery, where you can find calm and reflect on your life. I want to start by waking up your special imagination, a part of you that you might not use often, but will come alive with this audiobook. This journey we're about to take isn't just about thinking, it's about going deep into your soul. I want to help you reach a place where it feels like a light has been turned on inside you, a light that will guide you for the rest of your life. I want you to tap into a part of yourself that will make a real difference in your life. You'll find a deep source of power within yourself and understand that this is your true purpose. You weren't born just to gather things or enjoy shopping, even though that can be fun. Life is about something much deeper. We're all here to explore our connection with power, and in the end, that power is the essence of God. In life, we move through stages. First, we rely on external power. Then we realize our own powerlessness. Next, we decide not to remain powerless. And finally, we learn that life is about experiencing empowerment and then surrendering that power back to its true source. This is the essence of great spiritual figures like Buddha and Jesus. They realized that all power flows through them from a higher source. Now, none of us may reach that ultimate level, and that's okay. But what we want is to get to a place where we are strong enough to command ourselves, where we understand that nothing external can control us. Even if you can reach this place just a little bit, where you realize, I'm in control of my own soul, I decide what has weight and importance in my life, then you've taken a significant step forward. Imagine if I asked, how many of you want my pen? Most of you probably wouldn't want it. That feeling of not needing something is what it's like to hold on to your power. I want you to remember that feeling deeply, so you can recognize what it's like to keep your power. It's about walking past someone without craving their approval, or hearing a difficult diagnosis and deciding, how much power am I going to let this take from me? You have the choice to decide how much power you give to any situation. Think about it. How much power will you allow a diagnosis, a setback, or someone else's opinion to take from you? Yes, facing fears, like the fear that comes with a tough diagnosis, can feel overwhelming. But the key is to recognize when you're losing your strength and to reclaim it. This awareness, this practice of managing your inner light, love, and personal laws is your new spiritual journey. It's important to understand that the way we've traditionally viewed power and spirituality is changing. The idea of a higher power that looks and acts like us is fading. We're moving into a new era of understanding what true empowerment means, and that's what I want to discuss before diving deeper. Now, I need to be honest. I've had my struggles with these concepts too. It's taken me a long time to grasp how we're truly designed. I want to share my perspective with you, but I want you to know that it's okay if you don't agree with everything. This is how I see things, through my own experiences and understanding, and you have the freedom to say, I don't think so, at any point. Life is about choices, and I'm offering you the choice to explore these ideas with me. I'm at a stage in my life where I'm an open book. You can ask me anything about my personal spiritual journey, how I came to these understandings, anything at all. My spiritual life has been wild and amazing, and I'm starting to share more about it. My work as a medical intuitive opened my eyes to how the universe and we as humans are connected. But it's been a long journey of unlearning what I thought was true and discovering what really is. I believe my journey reflects a journey we all take. Life is about unlearning the things we thought were true and learning to see the world in a new light. I've come to these conclusions because of what I've experienced and how I now understand the design of our spiritual and physical existence. Imagine you're like a planet, moving around in your own space, your own orbit. I often use this idea because it's simple and helps to explain things clearly. You are always moving through your own field, your own space, and it's important to understand that this is really true. You are living in an orbit of your own making. Now, think about how you relate to time, your past, and the space you occupy. One of the things I want to help you with is changing how you see these things. We all have control over how we experience time and how we organize our lives around it. Many people today say, "Time seems to be moving so fast." It's like we're all noticing this change in how we feel about time. Some people even hire others to manage their time for them because they feel like they can't keep up. But most of us don't fully understand why this change is happening. From my experience, especially through doing readings for people, I've learned a lot about the choices we make and how powerful they are. Every choice you make has a ripple effect, a consequence that shapes your life. This is part of how we co-create our reality with the universe. In the beginning, I didn't realize just how powerful our thoughts and words are, but now I do, and it amazes me. Every thought you have is like planting a seed, and every word you speak has the power to change things. For example, if you ask someone, "Do you love me?" the answer, whether it's yes or no, can have a huge impact on your life. Just one word can lift you up or bring you down. When I do readings, I try to track what I can see about your energy and your past. I look at how you've anchored yourself in what we call the past and how that affects you now. As we dive deeper into who you really are, exploring the many layers of your soul, it becomes clear that this journey isn't just about understanding yourself better. It's also about changing the speed at which you can understand the truth. And as we go deeper, you start to realize the importance of love and how powerful it is. You begin to see that love is not just a feeling, but a force that shapes your reality, guiding you toward the truth and helping you create the life you want. This journey is complex, but it's all about learning how to perceive the world in a new way, at a new speed, and with a new understanding of what's possible. When you bring kindness and compassion into a situation, you create a positive impact. Let's talk about the power of choosing to be compassionate versus choosing to judge others. When you open your heart to others, without letting personal biases get in the way, you allow yourself to shine a light on the situation. This light is powerful, uplifting, and has the ability to make a real difference in the lives of others. It's extraordinary to think that by simply choosing to be compassionate, you can bring so much positivity into the world. However, if you decide to go down a different path, to judge, to criticize, or to close yourself off, you block that light. By doing so, you not only harm others, but also prevent them from experiencing that positive energy. It's a choice between lifting others up or keeping them in the dark. But there's a challenge here. Loving others and empowering them isn't always easy. Sometimes you might fear that by empowering others, you'll lose something yourself. It's common to worry that if you help someone else, they might take advantage of you, or you might end up with less. But the real truth, the deep mystical truth, is that everything in life is connected. When you help others rise, you rise too. When you lift others, you're lifting yourself. This idea is like the saying, "A rising tide lifts all ships." Whatever you do to help others, you are also doing for yourself. To truly understand and live by these mystical laws is the journey of life. It's about choosing to live from your soul, the part of you that sees the bigger picture, instead of letting your ego, the part of you that is driven by fear and selfishness, take control. This is the real challenge, the battle between living from your soul versus living from your ego. And this battle isn't just inside of us, it shows up in the world around us too. Every decision we make reflects in the world. The conflicts we see, the wars that happen, are partly because we, as a collective, are going through a big change. We're moving from one way of living, like relying on fossil fuels, to a new way, like using solar energy. This shift is not just about energy. It's about moving from an old world to a new one, where we are more connected and whole. We are being called to live in a way that's holistic, meaning that we see everything as connected. Think about your body. If a doctor told you they had a medicine that would cure your kidneys but harm your heart, you'd probably think something's not right. That's because your body works as a whole. What affects one part affects the rest. In the same way, your body is like a small version of the earth. What happens in one part of your life affects the whole planet. This is a mystical law, often described as above, so below. It means that everything is connected. There's no separation between you and the earth. You are part of it. You are like a molecule in the body of the earth, and what you do matters to the whole. Right now, we're being called to come together, to form a whole body, a united world, where we understand that what's good for one is good for all. Remember, there's no separation between you and the rest of the world. You are an essential part of this earth, and your actions contribute to the well-being of the whole planet. When you decide to separate yourself from the bigger picture, thinking, I don't want to be like everyone else, I want to stand out and be special, you're choosing to be a rogue cell, like a cell in the body that refuses to work with the rest. You might think being different or exceptional is worth it, but eventually this mindset will cost you. Instead of trying to be extraordinary, in a way that goes against the natural flow of life, it's better to understand and respect the universal laws that guide us all. Your role is to learn these laws, live by them, and play your part in the grand scheme of things, even if that means being ordinary. If you choose to live outside of these laws, thinking they don't apply to you, you become like an outlaw, someone who's disconnected from the natural order. In today's world, we often look down on being ordinary. People might say, I'm not ordinary, look at how I dress, how I stand out. But this mindset, this need to be noticed, can lead you down a path that ultimately leaves you unfulfilled. The choices you make have consequences, and they anchor you in certain ways. These anchors can tie your soul down, keeping you stuck in negative emotions or false beliefs. For example, if you decide to hold on to anger, you create what I call anger anchors. These anchors weigh you down, and soon they become a part of your identity. When people meet you, they might only see your anger, which can make you seem boring or uninteresting because you're stuck in that negative space. To move forward and truly heal, you have to get over yourself first. If you can't overcome your own issues, you'll never be able to get past the problems you have with others. Healing and personal growth require you to rise above your limitations, to gain what I call altitude. This altitude is a state of timelessness, where you're no longer bound by the past or by negative emotions. It's what some people might call miracle territory. But it's not really a miracle. It's just living in the present moment, free from the weight of the past. Jesus taught us about these universal laws, showing us that by understanding and following them, we can achieve what might seem impossible. It's not magic, it's about learning and living by these laws. However, I've learned through my experiences, people carry deep wounds, and it doesn't take much to hurt someone. Human beings are complex. We're strong, but we're also fragile. We can be incredibly loving, but we can also be bitter and vengeful. We're a paradox. We want to love and be loved, but at the same time, that's what we fear the most. It's interesting that no one ever needs a seminar on how to hate or hold a grudge. Those things come naturally to us, but we do need help with learning how to forgive and love, even though that's what we crave the most in life. It's ironic that the very thing we all want, love, is often the hardest for us to give and receive. So I encourage you to let go of your fears, your anger, and your need to be special. Embrace the idea of being part of the whole and allow yourself to live by the natural laws that govern us all. By doing this, you'll find true peace and fulfillment, and you'll be able to rise to a higher level of understanding and connection with the world around you. Now, this audiobook is about one thing: getting over yourself. Now let's take a step back and look at the big picture, because I like to give a broad overview before diving into details. It's fascinating how our understanding of the world changes over time and how we, as a collective, grow and evolve. We often think we have everything figured out, what the world is like, what we believe in, and then suddenly we realize we were wrong. We reach a point where we're able to see a bigger truth, something we couldn't see before, and this new understanding changes us. For example, think about when Copernicus and Galileo discovered that the Earth revolves around the Sun. Today, we don't even question that fact, it's just something we all know. But back then, hundreds of years ago, this discovery was a big deal. It completely changed how people in the West, especially in the Catholic Church, thought about their relationship with God and the universe. Before that, humans believed they were the center of the universe, but Copernicus and Galileo showed that wasn't true, and this was a huge shift in thinking. It threatened the idea that humans were the most important part of the cosmos. This change wasn't just about science, it was about how people understood their place in the universe. They had to adjust their entire worldview because they realized that God had created a universe that didn't revolve around them. It was a major shift in consciousness. Now, here's the key point. Did Copernicus and Galileo really discover something new? Or did they just come to a realization about something that had always been true? The Earth always revolved around the Sun, even before they figured it out. What changed was that humanity reached a point where they could accept this truth. So they didn't really discover it, they realized it. And that's a big difference. I prefer the word realization over discovery. When we say we've discovered something, it sounds like we found something that wasn't there before, as if it didn't exist until we noticed it. But the truth is, these things have always been there. We just hadn't been able to accept them until we were ready. The same thing happened when people realized the Earth was round. It didn't suddenly become round when someone figured it out. It was always round. We just reached a point where we could finally understand and accept that truth. And this is the kind of consciousness I want you to have as we talk about our understanding of God and the divine. We are on the brink of realizing something about the nature of the divine that has always been true, but we just weren't ready to see it before. This is a huge realization, and it's important to grasp this concept. So, as we go forward, remember that we're not discovering something new. We're coming to understand something that has always been there, and this realization is going to change how we see everything. Throughout history, people have always needed to understand God in a way that made sense to them at the time. During the early eras of human development, we were living in small, tight-knit communities or tribes. Because of this, we imagined God as a figure that looked and acted like us, a tribal God that fit our tribal way of life. This kind of thinking shaped our understanding of God's power as something external, something outside of ourselves. Now, it's really important to grasp this idea. When we saw God as an external force, we imagined that God was somewhere out there, up in the sky or beyond the physical world. To connect with this distant God, people believed they needed to do special things like lighting candles, burning incense, making sacrifices, or offering prayers. These rituals were seen as necessary to get God's attention, to make sure that this powerful force noticed us and responded to our needs. If we go back to the origins of religion, we see that humans have always had this instinctive feeling that there is something greater than themselves. Even in ancient times, when people were living in caves, they painted on walls and created symbols that expressed their belief in something beyond their everyday existence. There was never a time when people didn't believe in some kind of higher power. Atheism, or the idea that there is no God, is a very modern concept. From the very beginning, humans have felt a deep need to connect with something greater, something beyond themselves. This connection is essential for our well-being. We simply can't thrive without it. This brings us to a deeper understanding of how we are designed. If we look at spiritual traditions like the Jewish tree of life or the concept of chakras, we see that these ideas were not just about creating a religion. They were about recognizing that there is something inherent in our very nature, something divine and organic, that connects us to the cosmos, to the universe around us. We are made from the same substance as the universe, and this power that surrounds us also flows through us. This is who we are at our core. Over time, people developed myths, stories, and rituals to try to explain this connection, to articulate what they felt but couldn't fully understand. In the past, before the modern era introduced doubt, and the idea that we can deny the existence of good and evil, there was a deep humility in how people approached life. They understood that there is so much more to the world than what we can see or comprehend. One of the key teachings of Teresa of Avila, a great mystic, is about the importance of humility. In her view, the first step in spiritual growth, the first mansion on the journey to knowing yourself, is to be humble. But what does it mean to be humble? I looked up the word humble and found that it's often defined as poor. But true humility isn't about being poor or lowly. It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers. It's about asking, what can I learn today? What don't I know? Think about how often you've been certain about something, only to later realize you were wrong. Maybe you judged someone or assumed something about them, and then you found out that you were completely off base. True humility is understanding that you know nothing for sure. It's about sitting back and asking what is really true here, instead of rushing to judgment. We can't see the past clearly. We can't predict the future, and we definitely can't understand all the different layers of someone else's life. We can't know what God is telling them to do, or what their journey is supposed to be. So we have to remind ourselves constantly to stay humble, to recognize our smallness in the grand scheme of things. It's not our job to demand that the universe explain itself to us. We are just a tiny part of a much larger whole. And our task is to learn, grow, and accept our place in that vast, mysterious design. I want you to think about people who always want to know everything about you, every little detail. How would that make you feel? Would you be okay with it, or would it bother you? Most of us would probably feel like saying, "Stop! You have no right to know everything about me. The truth is, I don't even know everything about myself, so why should you?" And what if they started making up stories to fill in the gaps? That would be even worse, right? This is where being humble comes in. Humility means being able to say, "I don't know." When you're humble, you realize that it's not your job to judge or assume things about others. Instead, you become strong enough to ask a higher power, whether you call it God, the universe, or something else, to guide you. You might pray, "Tell me what you want me to know and I'll accept that. I won't judge and I'll move on." This simple prayer can be very powerful because it helps you let go of the need to judge and opens you up to understanding more than you might have on your own. When you stop judging others, you begin to see how much negative energy judging creates. It's like a cycle. If you judge others, you'll eventually find yourself being judged. That's what the old saying means. Judge not, lest you be judged. These aren't just words. They are deep, mystical truths, universal laws, really. When you understand that the universe works according to these laws, you start to see that everything is connected. If you put out judgment, judgment will come back to you, and it won't feel good. But if you put out love, love will return to you. Looking back at ancient times, I find it fascinating how people understood the universe. They seem to have a very different relationship with time, space, and energy compared to how we think today. You might argue that people were always violent, but today, even though we know better, we're still dealing with so much violence. Despite the challenges, I believe that ancient people had a clearer understanding of the natural laws that govern the universe. For example, if you look at old scriptures, there are stories like Abraham welcoming angels into his tent. In those days, I believe people could actually see and interact with beings like angels. They lived in a time when these universal laws were just being revealed to them, and they were beginning to understand that the universe operates on these laws. This was also the time of Pythagoras, who was one of the first to explore the idea that the universe is based on mathematical laws. For Pythagoras, numbers weren't just symbols, they were alive with meaning. He believed that the number 1, for instance, represented wholeness. It wasn't just a number, it was a state of being complete and whole. Now, as we move to the number 2, which is connected to the second chakra in our bodies, we enter the realm of conflict. The second chakra is associated with duality and division, where things start to split apart. And just like in math, where dividing numbers creates fractions, in our own lives, entering conflict can split our energy, our focus, and even our cells. This idea that numbers and chakras are connected to how we experience life is fascinating. It shows that these universal laws aren't just abstract ideas, they are actually at work within us every day. When you begin to understand this, you see that everything is connected, from the numbers in the universe to the energy within your own body. Each choice you make, each time you enter into conflict or choose peace, you are activating these universal laws within yourself. And the more you understand and align with these laws, the more harmonious your life becomes. It's about connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture of how everything is linked together. What I realized is that mathematics isn't just something we study in school, it's actually a part of us. We are living, breathing mathematical systems. We are the universe, and the universe is within us. Everything is interconnected, and this oneness is at the core of our existence. The essence of life's journey is about understanding this oneness, that all life is connected, and we are all parts of a single collective soul. This is the era we're in now, where we are slowly waking up to this truth. But it's not an easy journey. We often resist this idea because it means letting go of our separateness and becoming part of something bigger. Now someone asks, when you were talking about the soul, can you explain what you mean by the collective soul? How are we all part of that? Is each of our souls just a small piece of a larger soul, or is it more like a wave in a big ocean? Let me put it this way. Have you ever made cookies? You know how when you mix all the ingredients together, like the sugar, salt, flour, and butter, it all blends into one dough? You can't really tell where the sugar ends and the salt begin, because it all works together to make the dough. Without every single ingredient, the cookies wouldn't turn out right. Each ingredient is essential. In the same way, each of us is like one of those ingredients in the collective soul. You might not know if you're the sugar or the salt, but it doesn't really matter because it's all necessary. That's how life works too. We are all essential parts of the whole, and each one of us plays a vital role. Every person's role is equally important, significant, and beautiful, just like each ingredient in those cookies. Without each one of us, the whole wouldn't be complete. Never fool yourself into thinking that just because someone is quietly praying in a monastery or somewhere you don't see them, that their role in the world isn't as important as someone like Steve Jobs. If you believe that, you're seriously mistaken. You have no idea how important grace is. Those quiet people, deep in their powerful prayers, are the ones who keep this world from going completely off the rails. It's their grace, their deep spiritual energy, that keeps the madness of those who think they run the world from destroying us all. And that's the absolute truth. If you truly understand what real power is, you'll know that the ones who make the most noise, who are the loudest in the room, are actually the ones with the least power. Never forget that. The real power lies with those who are quiet, those who are hidden away, praying and holding this crazy world together. It's you who will come to realize just how powerful you are in your silence, in your prayers. You don't need to make a lot of noise or draw attention to yourself to be powerful. Now, every time we find ourselves in conflict, represented by the number 2 in the chakra system, we are actually resisting the idea of oneness. Right now, we see these conflicts playing out all around us in the world, just like how our bodies fight illness. When we're sick, our cells are in conflict, trying to heal but also resisting change. Similarly, as humans, we struggle against becoming whole, even though that's what we need to do to truly heal and grow. I learned that we often sabotage our own growth. We do everything we can to avoid becoming whole because deep down we're afraid. We fear that if we truly became as loving and complete as we could be, we would lose control over our lives. We'd have to give up our personal desires and instead serve the greater good of humanity. This fear is rooted in a lack of faith and trust in something greater than ourselves, in divine assignments or the idea that there is a purpose to our lives beyond our individual wants and needs. We worry that if we fully embrace love and wholeness, we'll end up suffering, poor, or sacrificing our happiness. But in reality, becoming whole is about trusting that the universe has a plan for us, and that by serving others, we are fulfilling our true purpose. So as we move forward in this era, our challenge is to overcome these fears, to trust in the process, and to realize that we are all part of one great interconnected whole. It's not about losing ourselves, but about finding our true place in the universe. We often talk about reaching our full potential and looking for higher possibilities in life. But deep down, we're not really ready for what that means. We don't fully embrace the idea of divine assignments, tasks or paths that the universe might have for us. Even though we might not say it out loud, we still think we can control God or the universe. Do you get what I mean? This struggle is something we all share. It's part of our journey as human beings. Isn't it amazing how we think? We're just small beings on this vast planet, yet we believe we can control the entire universe. We try to control things by deciding what's right and wrong, by making up our own rules. Some people even go so far as to say that there's no such thing as good or evil, thinking they can just do whatever they want, as if they have the power to rewrite the eternal laws of the universe. It's almost laughable when you think about it, right? It's like telling someone, you might as well stick your head in a toilet, because that's how absurd it is to think we can control the grand design of life. Now, if we look where we are in history, we're living in a time of transition, moving from one era to another. We're at the end of an era where people believed in a God who was far away, sitting up in the sky, judging us. This era was shaped by the Abrahamic religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, where God was often portrayed as a man who looked and acted like us, deciding our fate from some kind of heavenly courtroom. People would say, I must have done something wrong if something bad happens to me, as if only bad people experience bad things. And when something terrible happens to innocent people, we often react with disbelief, saying, how could this happen to them? But we need to shift our thinking. We need to reach a point where we understand that events just happen. They're not inherently good or bad, they simply occur. For example, wars happen because of the collective fears and hostility that we all contribute to as human beings. The conflicts we see in places like Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, and Russia are fueled by our shared fears, like the fear of not having enough, or the fear of people who are different from us. Every little bit of fear and judgment that we hold inside us adds to the bigger picture of what's happening in the world. Here's the important part. We have more power than we realize. If each of us worked on healing these fears and judgments within ourselves, the conflicts around the world would lose their fuel. Imagine if no one had these fears. Those conflicts might not even exist. But because we all participate, even in small ways, we keep these issues alive. This is where the power of consciousness comes in. Every time you judge someone, every time you look at another person and think, why are they coming into our country? Or they're going to take our jobs? You're contributing to a mindset that creates division and conflict. When you start to understand things on a cosmic level, you realize that every thought, every judgment, and every fear we hold has an impact. We're all connected, and we all play a part in shaping the world around us. Okay, now it's time to get into yourself and into your life. I want you to really take a moment and turn your attention inward, focusing on your life and who you are. I'm talking directly to you about your life. I want you to think to yourself, I'm going to dive deep into my own life and look within myself. This is all about your journey, not anyone else's. You're about to explore your own mind, your own thoughts, and your own attitudes, just like you're doing a deep, intuitive checkup on your soul. You're going to ask yourself, where is my soul at right now? What tasks have I given my soul? What beliefs am I holding on to? It's time for you to really track and examine yourself, all right? Now here's something I've learned about how to explain this. We actually operate on different levels of consciousness, just like you might have heard in Buddhism or when people talk about chakras. These are like different layers of awareness we move through, and we function on all of them. But let me tell you this. Even though I'll describe these different levels, you need to understand that all these levels are working together all the time. It's like a complete operating system, and it's always on. We are constantly using these levels of consciousness every moment of every day. There are moments when you might feel the power of your heart, which some call the fourth chakra. For example, have you ever experienced a moment of intense love where time just seems to stop? It's like you're so happy and content that you don't want to be anywhere else. But let's be real. Most of the time we aren't in that state. Most of the time our energy is scattered. You're probably thinking about 100 different things. Home, work, whatever's on your mind. But when you manage to be fully present, you're changing how you relate to time and space. You might even say, I can't believe how much time flew by. That's because in those moments you're not tied down by time. But usually our first level of consciousness, which is linked to survival and basic needs, makes time feel heavy, like an anchor. You might feel stuck thinking, will I ever get out of here? That's because your energy is leaking out, focusing too much on what's happening outside of you, and you don't realize that you can actually control that. Have you ever been in a situation where time seems to drag on forever, where every minute feels like an hour? Yeah, we've all been there. This is just one example of how our different levels of consciousness affect us. What we all need to learn is that we have control over these levels. When we entered the nuclear age, I believe the universe gave us a new lesson. We needed to understand that we play a role in creating our reality. It's like when people discovered the earth wasn't flat. We didn't fall off the edge because the truth was always there. But now we had to become aware of it. When people finally realized that they weren't going to fall off the edge of the earth, they had to make some big changes. The maps had to be redrawn because the way we understood the world changed. The way people traveled and navigated had to change too. They had to learn new skills to navigate this new understanding of the earth. In the same way, we need to develop new skills to navigate our consciousness. We have to learn that our thoughts are powerful and that they create the ideas and concepts we live by. Just like how we've learned to follow traffic signs, use maps, and understand speed limits when we're driving, we now need to learn how to navigate the energy around us and within us with the same kind of care and precision. The anatomy of your energy, which is connected to your soul, is just as complicated as the anatomy of your physical body. But it's even more important because it comes first. We need to understand how the laws of creation work, especially as we now know through science and physics that energy comes before matter. In other words, before something exists in a physical form, there's energy and thought that bring it into existence. This means that we must be very aware of our thoughts, because if thoughts can create physical forms, then thoughts must be extremely powerful. So what is this power that thoughts hold? Could it be what we call grace? And if it is grace, should we be praying or connecting to this grace before we start creating anything? You see, at the level of the soul, we call this energy, and we might also call it grace. But we need to grow and evolve to the point where we truly believe, oh my God, this really is grace. And realizing this requires us to develop a whole new set of skills for navigating our lives, very different from the skills we use to navigate the physical world. And now, when you think about how the universe works, it's amazing how it quietly guides us. It downloads information to us collectively, giving us the knowledge and the vocabulary we need to understand the world better. One of the big ideas that got downloaded into our collective consciousness after we entered the nuclear age is the realization that we created our own potential for destruction, and we're so foolish that we actually celebrate this power. But the even bigger mistake is thinking that we won't eventually use it. Are you kidding? Of course we're going to use it. It's not a question of if, but when. We're foolish enough to think we can create these weapons and then just not use them. That's absurd. Of course we're going to use them. It's only a matter of time, place, and who will do it. But mark my words, we're going to end up using them because we believe we won't, and that's the height of foolishness. Here's where our naivety really shows. We are so arrogant to think that we've created all these destructive weapons and that we'll somehow never use them. That's just ridiculous. Of course, we're going to use them. And then we comfort ourselves by saying, oh, but it won't happen in New York. It won't happen in our nice, safe-gated communities. But let me tell you, if you believe that, you're being incredibly naive and foolish. We're fooling ourselves if we think we're immune to the consequences. One of the things the universe did was it gave us this powerful, mystical truth. We are the ones who create our reality. The real power we hold is not in our minds or our ability to think and strategize. It's in our souls. The nuclear power we talk about is nothing compared to the power of our souls. Your ego, that part of you that's driven by fear, pride, and selfish desires, is where the destructive power lies. But your soul, that deeper, wiser part of you, knows that you have the freedom to make any choice you want. You have the power to evolve beyond hate and become someone who sees the pointlessness of destruction. That's our way out of this mess. By becoming a species that understands destruction is not the answer. We have to realize that we simply can't keep going down the path of destruction. We are living in the age of holism, which means that everything is connected. This time, everyone is involved. There's no escaping it. That's the dark side of holism. This time, we're all in it together. We're facing global challenges like pandemics and climate change that affect everyone, no matter where you are. The signs are everywhere, telling us that we're all connected, and there's no place on Earth that's going to be safe from the consequences. Not Alaska, not Montana, nowhere. This time it's about the whole, and that means we either all change or we all suffer together. That's the reality we're dealing with. Some people might say, oh, you're being so negative. But the truth is, deep down, you know this. You feel it in your gut, and you can see it in how you treat your own body. This is our new understanding of spirituality. There's no God out there, off in the heavens, who's going to come down and rescue us. The new way of thinking is about a biospiritual ecology, a theology that understands that God is not some distant being, but a set of laws that govern everything. Every choice we make has a consequence. Every decision contributes to either the healing of the planet or its harm. And we know this because the impact of our choices is immediate. We see it in our own lives and in the world around us. Every act of forgiveness you offer helps heal the planet, just as every violent thought or action adds to the violence in the world. We have an incredible amount of power, and that's something you need to leave here knowing. Whether you decide to turn on that inner switch and say, that's it, I'm going to transform my life right now, is up to you. But know this, it's going to take a lot of prayer, a lot of deep inner work. Thank you for listening.